How's it going, guys? Indiana John here with another edition of Machine Monday. And this week's featured machine is none else but the Gorton 3U. No, it is not 3U. 3L, sorry. 3U is the little guy back there. The 3L. This is my all-time favorite Pantomill ever, and there's quite a few of them. Not that I have. I've got this in the Deckel GK12, which kind of counts as a Pantomill. Not really sure. But this guy is definitely a Pantomill, which is just a pantograph mill. And I think the primary thing that qualifies it as a mill is having a heavy spindle. Not just being able to move the knee or just having a 3D function, but the spindle itself is like pretty hefty. And it does have a pretty sweet micrometer adjustment. I don't know if you can hear that, but it's got a little click. And that's, you also probably can't see that. I have a hard time seeing it, but it's an interesting dial with long grooves, and there's a needle that rides up and down on those grooves for the divisions and thousandths, and a 3-ball crank up here, and this guy locks like that, this guy locks like that, and then this thing, that is a fine adjustment for the quill, and with the little mic adjuster you can boink change your depths, which is something that I should use more often, but I don't use it very often. I'll typically zero my knee once I touch off on the part, and then I'll zero the knee with the quill all the way down, and then I'll lift it, lock it, and then adjust the depth on this dial, and that works pretty good. But I can also do it here. Yeah, it's got a lot of sweet little features. The crank, there it is, glitch right out. The crank, like with other pantographs, slides on and slides off. And it's a pretty sweet crank. It's got a has a square hole for hopping onto there, and this guy spins very freely. It's just a satisfying little bit of kit. Yeah, it's a sweet machine. The ratios it can do is a little bit limited because of how beefy the pivoting areas need to be. Normally, with pantograph engravers, they can usually do up to like 1 to 16, 1 to 18 type of thing. This can only go up to 1 to 8. I'm sorry, 8 to 1. But that's good enough for most of what I do. And in fact, because of the size of what I do, I almost always leave it at a 5 to 1 ratio. And so this here is the master template with hole pattern templates on it, and I did a whole video on making these, and I haven't put that together yet, so that'll be coming soon. But this does. Let me grab that knife. That hole pattern does this, and it's like a Benchmade style hole pattern. And I do all of the holes, all the countersinks, these holes and counter bores, and you can do 4 scales at a time, or you can do 4 liners at a time on this machine, on this fixture plate template, and it's just the best thing for making balisongs. This machine is so stinking great that I'm getting another one identical to it pretty soon. I'm not sure exactly when, but I'm just waiting on the seller to settle on a time to go get it. But yeah, it's a super sweet machine. You can do what I usually do is I just do whole location stuff. But you can, this is a little handle I put on there, you can take that out and you can mount the 3D function bar onto the top of the stylus arm, and then you can do 3-dimensional milling. That's loose and that's loose. You can do 3D milling, and it's a really neat way that it works. So this is a pantograph arm mechanism. It's a 4-linkage parallelogram mechanism. A pantograph is for tracing and copying at a ratio. And this guy, you'd think that when you move this closer, you'd think that, woohoo, that was close. You gotta keep an eye out for that. Almost snapped my drill. You'd think when it's closer, that would change the kind of height that it would do than when it's further away. You'd think when it's out here, that would change the amount that it moves up and down, but it doesn't, because it's also changing the pivot point distance stays proportional to the spindle and stylus distance. So it doesn't matter how far away it is. So this effectively is a 1-dimensional pantograph mounted perpendicular to a 2-dimensional pantograph. And it only works because it's mounted to a pantograph. And it's just like the coolest thing to me, you know. The way the 3D function works on other pantographs, like the decal over there, is with a pantograph pivot, which is essentially the same thing, but you can't really use it to drill holes because the spindle, you know, moves like that. Versus with this guy, you can do that. You can drill holes vertically, and it's got like big old cool springs on there, cool coil springs. Yeah, it's just super duper sweet, and I love it, and I use it all the time. What else can I say about it? I need to get like an actual way cover. This is just a piece of plywood, so that chips and stuff don't get into that, because that's just an exposed lead screw. So that's not great, but it kind of doesn't matter because you don't really use you just use the screw to move it around to lock into a position by eyeball, you know, and then you use a pantograph to do the machining. You can crank it around and use it like a normal mill, but it's better to just use a Bridgeport for that. So that's that. Yeah, it's the motor on it was off. It came with a 3-phase motor, which was down there for a while, but it's not there. And it worked fine. It was like a third or a half horsepower, and I need to have the phase converter on to use it, so that was kind of annoying. I wanted it to be higher horsepower and not 3-phase, and it turns out that table saw that I had that I wasn't using, that I don't think I'm going to use, had exactly that motor, and it needs to spin the other way from normal single-phase AC motors, and it did. So I just popped that on there, and that works pretty good. It's really easy to change the belt speeds. Easy, you gotta like walk around to the back of the machine, but that's fine. And it has a 3/8 straight shank chuck, which is a weird thing. And so right now I have a 3/8 shank Jacob's chuck that can open to 3/8, and that chuck is mounted in that chuck, which seems redundant, but it isn't, because the chuck in the spindle can only do 3/8. It's not a collet, it is a chuck, but it just does 3/8. And there are these guys, which are straight shank collets, and they work fine. There's only a couple sizes, and they're knurled on the end, so you can like twist it and pull it out. But it's kind of obnoxious to try to pull them out of the chuck. And so I got this guy, which is an ER20 collet adapter, and I made a little wood block, as I love to do, and I got a collet set for it, and so I can put in all of these different sizes really easily and concentrically, surprisingly, which is super duper cool. For doing counterbores, I just use an end mill. I just pop it in there and do my counterbores. That works great. Yeah, it's a sweet machine, and it is so helpful for what I do. 10 out of 10 recommend grabbing a Gorton 3L. Super duper great machine. Yeah, I think that's about it. If you got any questions, I would love to answer them. I love talking about pantographs. Yeah, I think that's it. Thanks for watching, and have a good one. Bye.